Today is an opportunity for us to really learn from you as feminist leaders how you grow an institution, right? To be at the cutting edge of feminist thinking, analysis, organizing, movement building, and intergenerational linkages. We're also going to discuss some of the challenges and how we have overcome them. So, I would like to start with you, BC. You were very much there as Akina Mama was a very small, cooking in the kitchen. Please take us back to that time. Take us back to some of the key issues we were dealing with, some of the key contestations we were having, some of the dreams that we had, and how we built those dreams into something fabulous in 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Sarah. The challenge will not be trying to get all that into 5 minutes, because there's only so much you can say in 5 minutes. The challenge would be getting through this without crying. Good evening, dear sisters. And the few gentlemen who have joined us. And a very special greeting to my beloved sisters on this platform. November 1990, I was living in London. I was working for the Department of Health as an administrative officer. And I saw an advert in the papers. For those of you who lived in London back then, or who still live in London now, actually, I don't think it's still in publications. So there was this black community publication known as The Voice. And those of us from the black community we made sure we bought The Voice every week because it came out every week. And so there was this ad in The Voice for a development and outreach worker at Akina Mama, Afrika. At that point, there were a number of things I was not clear about as a young black African married woman living in London. There were quite a number of things I wasn't sure about. But the one thing I was clear about was I wanted to work with women. So when I saw that ad, I went to the address, but I called in, and this very polite young lady, answered the call and gave me an appointment to come in to pick up the application form. And I went in, and lo and behold, there was this sweet young woman who was there, one of their volunteers who attended to me, gave me the form. And that sweet young lady, who was at the time maybe a size 8 or size 10, was Ihoma Obibi. I'm going to try and make this, speed this up as much as I can. I was interviewed for the job by 2 women, of course older than I was. I was quite nervous because these were formidable African sisters. And then I got a phone call that they were interested in offering me the job. There was someone else they were looking at. So we had to do a written interview, which I did. And then they called and said I had got the job. So my first day in the office in January 1991, I was welcomed by Jerusha Arodevon, and I'll come back to her in a moment, who showed me 2 cabinets in Akina Mama Afrika's office at 4 Wild Court, Holborn, London. She showed me 2 cabinets. One cabinet was open and had a number of files. One cabinet was locked, and they did not have the keys for that cabinet. And she told me, we have just had a big fight in the organization. Some members have left. So this cabinet that is locked belongs to the faction that left. And this cabinet that is open is ours. And it was at that point that it was revealed to me that the two sisters, the two aunties who interviewed me, were representatives of two different factions. And I had no idea. So, but they both agreed that I was the best person for the job. But as soon as I was hired, the other sisters then departed from the organization. I had no idea who they were. I had never met them before. So this young black African woman living in London, whose only experience at that time was working in the civil service, I walked into this Pan-African Women's Organization that, had featured so well in development circles in the UK at the time as, being this great organization for African women. And there was all this that had happened. They had mail that they had not opened in 6 months. They had bills that had been unpaid for as long. And I was the only member of staff they could afford to employ. Fortunately, the one room we had in the London Women's Center was being paid for by the London Borough of Camden, so we were not being chased around for rent. And so I was with this very strange entity for 10 years. And during that 10-year period, I made friends. I helped build the institution. I helped set up an office in Kampala, Uganda, where we decided to start the African Women's Leadership Institute. As women around the world were raising their voices in the 1990s in different policy spaces, we went around as well to Vienna, to Beijing, to Cairo, to make our voices heard. And over the past, I don't know how many years, this wonderful organization, at the time I left Akina Mama Africa in 2001, had produced over 6,000 women leaders across the continent. And now, that number has gone up to over 10,000. And this organization that I left behind, when I was leaving, we had only one funder when I joined, the London Borough of Camden. And by the time I left, we had multiple funders all over the world. And so I learned in the 10 years I was in Akina Mama that you build an institution by being clear about what the goal is, what the vision is. The women who founded Akina Mama Africa, Wanjiru Kihoro, may her soul rest in power, Jerusha Rothevon, she would have joined us, but she has some health challenges. Sisters like Amina Mama, Loretta Nkobo, Loretta to her soul rest in peace, Brenda Malaleka, quite a number of them, they came together to set up Akina Mama Africa as a space for African women to raise their voices. And as I joined, at that phase in my life, the two concepts that I never forgot then and still remain with me now was the need for us to create our own spaces, because they kept saying Akina Mama Africa, creating our own spaces, speaking for ourselves. So you build an institution by being clear about what the goal is, by building relationships that last, and even when there is crisis, there is conflict and so on, always remember, as one of my mentors taught me over time, Dr. Hilda Tadria, don't sweat the small stuff. And as black women, as African women, it is going to be extremely easy for people to dismiss you, to underestimate you. And it's okay. Let your work be your politics. People don't have to like you. They don't have to agree with you. Let the work be your politics. And another thing that I learned, Sister Sarah, was that these institutions, these spaces we occupy, where we raise our voices, at the end of the day, they are never about us. They are about what is supposed to happen down the line. I'll stop there.
Toko, let me ask you now. You came in after 10 years of BC. What did you find? What did Akina Mama Africa look like? And let me ask, what brought you to Akina Mama? And what did Akina Mama look like to you when you found it?
Being a founder director of an organization in Zimbabwe that we had just set up. Then a friend of mine, who happened to be on the board of Akina Mama, Eva Joyce Wynne, said, "Hey girl, there's a job that is going in London." I was in Harare, eh? I said, okay, let me try. The next thing, I had a ticket to London. I think I arrived, and maybe I slept, I can't remember. But I had this interview, and after the interview, I was heading to the airport. Before I boarded, I was phoned to say I had gotten the job. I thought, wow, this is such an affirmation and a clarity of people in what they want. I found an organization that was quite well resourced, because for the 3 years, we didn't really struggle. It was the last 6 months I was there that I struggled. And then during that time, Zida said something that made me angry with her. She said that fundraising is friend making. I was in the middle of a difficult fundraising, and she said that, and I thought, Subsequently, I have used that in the funding organization that I've worked in the women's organizations that I've been a board of, that it is friend making. Because also, as BC went off and they started seeing these faces, they don't know where they were coming from. It was the conversations that we had as we sat during the trainings and the things that were shared that built those that were not alumni, but those that were sitting there. It strengthened my feminism. And it gave me a backing of where to fall to. There were many things that I talk about today with the young feminists that are quotes from Akina Mama and the sisters in Akina Mama. You know that quote about it's the hands that wash the plates. It's the hands that wash the plates. So anyone with the hands. So it's some of those things that were said that, you know, become what you can share, what you can build on, what it can be. And I think it builds strong institutions in the sense that there is a shared history, there is a sharing of what people have been, because you learn in what the sisters have done and what they are.
Zida, I'm going to ask you the same question as I asked Toko. When you joined Akina Mama, what was the organization you found? And I think we should share as honestly as possible, you know, just so we can create some learning and understanding. So Toko has been very, you know, frank about the fact that after BC left, a very strong leader who was recognized, fundraising became a bit of a challenge.
First of all, there was no money in the organization, and that was a constant. Gloria was on the team at that time. Staff salaries were not guaranteed. We had a nasty landlord who, you know, would come knocking, threatening us, because we had signed a contract which for an incredible amount of money every month, and we couldn't raise that money. And we were living under, you kind of suggested it, Toko. We had the BC. And I mean, for example, I went to a conference in New York once, and I had a t-shirt written Akina Mama. Every woman would be, BC, Akina Mama! So that was a personality. And what BC, what you represented for Akina Mama, threw a very long shadow. I mean, you said yesterday there was huge shoes to fill. So I came on board because we had a vacuum. And the late Stella Mukasa, may she rest well, we had this meeting. Well, somebody has to go and hold the fort. She was getting a baby, somebody had health struggles. I seemed to be the only one who was able and willing to step down from the board and go in and hold the organization. I found a team who was a little bit rattled because Toko's tenure had come after this long shadow, and you know, the contract didn't extend. There was a little bit of uncertainty. And then there were all these partners who didn't know these new faces, and it was just a difficult time in the environment anyway, the funding environment. So yes, that's what I found. And then I found one staff member who had institutional memory, was very, very pregnant, and was going through, I'm tired, my feet are swollen, I can't, you know, answer this question. So it was really every day we were finding each other. In the corridor, somewhere between the offices, there was a microwave. And that was like the meeting point. So this lovely Nene, who was expecting, she would come and be heating her food, warming it because she had to feed her baby. So in the morning, she's warming fish, she's warming chicken, she's warming rice, and everybody's joining her because we'd all feel hungry, so not too much work was happening. But there was that spirit which brings me to that very original question: how do you build an organization? Each single woman who was in that office had a commitment to Akina Mama. But most importantly, and this is something I like to share, you cannot do this work if you don't like yourself. And if you like yourself, it means you will like women who are like you. As an African woman, I love African women. And this work is possible, and this legacy building is possible because of that love and that commitment. And the staff struggled, and we went through, and I remember, Gloria, I don't know whether you remember that check that came from Sigrid Rousing. Oh, I photocopied it, I caressed it, I rubbed it on myself. You know, that landlord came, and I'm like, yes. You know, so I found an unsteady, uncertain team, and Akina Mama was on the edge. It was either make or break. And it made it because there was a very committed board. Stella was chair at that time. And EJ, who had lots of ideas and was very motivating. And also because I was able to live without a salary for a while. So the commitment is, you know, I found commitment. I found many pending reports. People calling in to say that report didn't come, we gave you that. It was a bit chaotic. But I found love, I found commitment, and we were still sharing that vision.
So we've heard from you know, the sort of beginnings, very big vision, very big excitement for it, a huge leader, and then we hear from Togo having to navigate that space after that huge leader leaves the space, and how treacherous the donor community could be. Because one person has gone, the whole organization is assumed to be going. So I think these are the stories we want to hear about. What kept you going? Now, Salome, you were a young, I mean, everybody was young then, but you were especially young, worked in Uganda and so on. Just tell us a little bit, what took you to Akina Mama? What did Akina Mama look like when you joined?
I'm one of the biggest experiments of the AMwA because I'm an AMwA alumni of 2004, and yes, proudly so. As I was preparing for this, I had to look out in my database where that picture is, and I got the picture. In the picture, Toko was giving the certificates, and Sarah was in the picture. I always say I'm an experiment because I was like a guinea pig. You train women, 10,000 women, and then you assume they're going to go and light fires out there. Now the fire was in Akina Mama's own kitchen. So, what took me to Akina Mama? When I attended the AMwA, you know that time the AMwAs would be 2 weeks, 3 weeks. When I attended the AMwA, the last week you're working around your work plan. In my work plan, I wrote 3 things for me that were important. The first thing, I needed to deepen my feminism because while I attended the AMwA, I was an ED of the National Women's Network, Uganda Women's Network. But the things I had in the AMwA, I'd never had anywhere. I went to the AMwA when I decided 2 master's degree in gender. I never had those things. But even also, I'm an ED of a network. So the AMwA for me was a space that allowed me to realize I do not know a lot, and I need to know more. So I said, I need to get into a space where I need to deepen myself. Secondly, in my work plan, I said, the fact that I'm so excited about all these women I've met, one day, I must head one of the Pan-African organizations, a feminist organization. For me, actually, that was my target in my work plan. I even listed them down. Which ones were these? Akina Mama, WILDAF, Femnet, Women Living Under Muslim Laws. I don't remember them, the 5th one. So I listed them and said, whichever of these, I must lead it. I must work myself towards leading a Pan-African feminist organization because I feel I can make a difference there. The third point was around my personal life. It was in a mess. I said, you know what? I am tired of breathing cold in the morning, breathing warm in the afternoon. I need to be clear. I need to live my feminism in my personal life. So, in my work plan for heading a Pan-African organization, I'd given myself 5 years. What happened is that I became the ED of Akina Mama in 3 years. Yes, from attending the AMwA. Because for me, that is the power of dreaming. I worked around whatever it is, build. And then, why did I go into the Akina Mama? Actually, Akina Mama courted me for some time. Zida, I'm not lying. Stella and Zida were courting me. And then I'm thinking, am I ready? Because I had young children. By then, I was passing through a divorce. So I'm thinking, if I leave these children, I'll lose custody. Do I want to go to London? But I took a leap of faith. I said, I am going to go, even I need fresh air to go. I sat on that flight feeling like a bird that had been caged, and they open a window and you fly. So that's one of the things that took me to Akina Mama. Number 3, Akina Mama was a space where I knew I could do things that are deeply feminist. When I left the AMwA, I had so much fire. But I was thinking, won't this fire crash the organization where I am? It was going to crash the organization. Actually, I remember in my interview, I asked the interviewers, what are the things I can never do? They asked me, do you have a question? I said, yes. What are the things I can never do? So I told them, okay, anything that I can never do, I can be what? Do. And probably that explains why I was very radical in my leadership. When I got in, I said Akina Mama needs to be a purely feminist space. We must open this space up to women who feel excluded in this space. We must do all the things that allow us to put our footprint. But more importantly, we must allow Akina Mama to take its true place on the continent. Because people are saying, now why are you leaving London? Fast forward. After I get the job, no, hey, something I've forgotten to tell you. Now, we had a telephone interview. And then, after the telephone interview, I had a physical interview in Nairobi, where I met Zida, and then whoever booked our flights booked my seat next to Stella Mokasa's seat. And by then I had wide hips. Hey, I squeezed her all the way. You know, it's a 45-minute flight, but I squeezed her all the way to Nairobi. And I felt so bad about it. But you know, she was okay with it. She said, you know what, you don't have to worry. You're an African woman and love your body. And for me, that was very symbolic in terms of people acknowledging their own power, but also affirming us. So, taking on the job, I was excited, and then comes the job description. It had 11 points. Of the 11, 7 of them were relocating head office from the UK to Africa. Hey, that was one of the biggest challenges, but it was one of the most fulfilling things and the best decision Akina Mama has ever taken. Why? It allowed us to sort out issues of the landlord. That landlord, because I remember one of the challenges when I'd got in, the landlord took us to court again. And then he went and took Sigrid Rosing Trust money from the bank account. It was a mess. But also, secondly, it allowed us now to consolidate ourselves on the continent. People always were saying, Akina Mama is only the Eastern African office. The challenge that we had was to come to the continent. And some sisters and organizations felt threatened. Akina Mama is back on the continent. At least they were in London. It is far away. And then the donors. I remember I went and sat with one of our donors who said, I didn't know you have an office in London. I said, why? Oh, because we only fund your Africa programs. So, some of the learnings that personally I picked from that journey is around the power of vulnerability. Many times I'll be vulnerable because I was young. I'm a risk taker. I would keep Akina Mama in the newspapers for, in quotes, the wrong reasons, vagina monologues, an institute for sex workers, another institute for LBQ women, another whatever. You know, I would always be out there pushing the boundaries. But what did that mean? It meant Akina Mama did the purely feminist work we needed to do, but it came at a high cost. At a high cost for the individuals working in Akina Mama, the burnout was high, but also at a high cost for the organization, because we didn't have very clear security and safety protocols then. Actually, it wasn't even a conversation. Even wellness was not a conversation within the feminist movement then. It's one of the things that have just come up of late. And of course, lastly, as an individual, I learned the power of being vulnerable and allowing others to walk the journey with you. Personally, I can't leave this stage without thanking the sisters that walked the journey with me, because I was like a missile. You know these ones that go to Ukraine? Cha, 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 cha. But there were sisters that walked the journey with me. BC never left me behind. BC was always touching base. Sarah Mukasa was always touching base. Hope Chigudu would always appear, even if you do not know she's appearing. When I joined Akina Mama, I was given a mentor. Dr. Lynn Mudhoni Wanyeki was always there. We had Jessica Horn and Ellen Sprenger, who would always smell money wherever the money is. They would smell money and tell you, there is money here. So when I got in, probably by then, we passed through the challenges, because the UK office didn't have money, but also we had challenges with the landlord, with whatever it is and all that. The Kampala office had money because it was a regional office. But when I got in, things started stabilizing and money started coming. Lots of it that I remember one day somebody said, what are you going to use all that money for? We said, but African women have many problems. We are going to make sure every African woman passes through an institute.
Leah, tell us some of your recollections.
Wow. I came from a multilateral organization that hated women. And one thing I remember clearly is after I had managed to get this grant going with AWDF. They invited me to the African Feminist Forum. They said, Leah, you've got to see what it is that you're supporting. I was still at ACBF then. And that forum was in Accra. So I went all the way to Ghana. So I was just listening in to what was going on. I was amazed by the sessions that were being presented. And one of the sessions, without trying to call out Zida, was a session on sex with Zida. I am like, yes. I'm like, wow. So I said, I must go for that session. And it was a session where you had to write, whatever question or whatever clarity you needed around sex. So I think the session was really based on our sexuality. So I was like, okay, this is a good session, to be in. So I sat in that session. And then during the forum, I got a T-shirt which said, "This is what a feminist looks like." Hey, that was the best thing that happened to me and the worst thing that happened to ACBF. So there's a time we were going on mission with my executive secretary and my manager, and I proudly wore that, a T-shirt. Hey, they did not want to know me. So they would sit in the corner and I would be alone, and I'm thinking, what have I done wrong? So I realized after we came back from mission, there was a memo which was emphasizing on the dress that ACBF officers should be wearing when they're going on mission, not this branded stuff. I'm like, So I asked, so what is the dress? They said, no, you have to be in a suit. And according to them, I said, what do you mean I have to be in a suit? They said, no, you have to wear, your pencil skirt, your jacket, or you can wear trousers. And I did not own a single suit. So I said, but what I know of African women's dress, a suit can be my African fabric, the skirt, and the top. And they were like, no. But anyway, do not wear that feminist stuff. Okay, so I had to stop and behave. So how I came to ACBF, the board chair then was Amanda, and I decided after ACBF to just go back home. So I met her and she said, we just need somebody to be in the office just for 1 year because Salome has taken, she's going to do other things. So I said, okay, I'll come for the year. And yes, indeed, I found a very well-resourced organization. And then because she was not there, she had gone, I think you had gone to England. So the staff that I found in the office held my hand because there was so much going. They were telling me, Leah, we were organizing in Auli. Leah, we have the International Conference on the Great Lakes, and Akina Mama is the chair of the Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Committee. Leah, there's curriculum review. There is CSW, and all these were just going around. I'm saying, hey, you ladies, others. But they said, no. We have Organization X that will help with this. We have feminists who, to help with their curriculum. For me, it was just, oh my God. But the Auli that was being organized then with Salome, who had come back, and she was the facilitator. Oh my God, I was in simple awe of this person here. She took us through the Auli, and this is where now I moved from where I was, because when I was even supporting AWDF, all I was doing it is because of the passion I had for women. I didn't care, you know, I just said, they are supporting women, this is where I want to be. So when I went through the AULI, and looking at the sessions, there was self-mastery, there was self-care, and then she gave us a mirror. I'm thinking, great, I've got a mirror for my makeup. Little did I know. She said, yes, you can use the mirror, but take this mirror and use it when you are in your room. I'm like, but we've already got mirrors. Now, it was a little round mirror, and unfortunately, I think I have lost it. But it was all about bodily integrity. She said, if we are going to do this work with women, you need to know what is the men, huh? Yeah, oh yeah, thank you. She says they see these things, they fight for them. Look at your vagina. Have you seen, how many of you have seen your vagina? And me, I'm like, You know, and in African society, our vagina is known by all sorts of names. You know, it's down there, it's, you know, this thing. So for the first time, I took that mirror because I wanted to know, why do men, you know, fight? Why is this so? I happily used that mirror. And it was so empowering. So for me, I realized it was a space I wanted to be. It was a space that was empowering in terms of me knowing myself, because I realized unless I know myself, how can I give to others? How do I tell women about their SRHR? How do I talk about something that I haven't seen, that I don't have? So for me, the AULI curriculum just did wonders for me. And the other one was self-care. You know, then I made it a point that I need to look after myself. So I will not tell you how old I am, but hey, I'm not a spring chicken, but I have invested in looking after myself. So in terms of what is it that sustains a feminist organization, for me it's one, you must have the passion for your work. 2, sisterhood. You cannot do it alone. You need sisters. And I had sisters who walked the journey with me. And then 3, building relationships. Building relationships in the office and building relationships with others outside the office. Because if you do not build the necessary relationships with the people that you work with, hey, sisters, you will not go anywhere. Because those are the ones that held my hand and said, Leah, it is okay, we're gonna do this, because there is a feminist consultant XYZ, there's organization XYZ, there are all these other relationships that we should be able to tap in. So for me, that's what made my 3 years at AMwA worth it, and invest in sisterhood, passion, and relationships.
Thank you. As you know, it is a very difficult environment right now for feminist institutions in particular. The sort of backlash that we're seeing, the sort of cuts in funding, and so on. I would like you have all mentioned that this cycle has been one that has gone up, gone down, gone up, and gone down. I'd like you to give some of your passing shots, some words of advice that you would like to give to organizations here that may want to follow AMwA's example of 40 years. In 2 minutes each, Because these people here are telling us that they're talking amongst themselves over there. But maybe there are people here who want to listen. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sarah and my dear sisters. Two things. For an organization to be sustainable, it needs people, but it also needs clearly defined systems, structures, and processes. When I started at Akina Mama, that morning, the organization was at ground zero. There was no constitution. There were no HR policies, no financial management policies, no travel policies, no communication policies. And guess what happened? Over the years, we started to put those policies in place after one problem or the other emerged. A member of staff will try and raise money for something that she's doing privately while she's a full-time employee of the organization. Then we had to then run and start putting in place a fundraising policy. And so when I left Akina Mama to go to AWDF, in fact, before the organization was even launched, I had put together over 40 different policies. Because there were some conversations I was not going to be having from scratch. So all those things that we were doing, on the run, I made sure that those were in place. And over the years, the organization has built on them. Because without them, when you have a small problem, it could be individuals, it could be any number of things, then things start crumbling. And my next point would be something that Leah said about passion. I usually tell women when I'm in spaces like this, let us always ask ourselves, am I in the right place? Because we occupy different spaces and we are able to do different things. Are you in the right place? And my own interpretation of that is, do you have the passion for what you're doing? Do you have leverage for what you're doing in terms of how you can leverage relationships and so on? Are you angry enough? Because you can't do this work without being angry. There's no such thing as a complacent feminist. There's no such thing as a maybe today, maybe tomorrow feminist. You have to be angry, not the kind of anger that will make you want to go and smack someone, but the kind of anger that motivates you to go out and push for change. Then, do you have the courage? Because not everyone will be your friend. You are not ice cream, so not everyone would love you. Not everyone will want to give you a lick or a kiss or, a caress. So do you have the courage to go out there and do what needs to be done or say what needs to be said? And then do you have the right kind of energy? And I mean energy in holistic terms. Even to be able to get yourself out of bed in the morning. There are sisters to come across 8 a.m. in the morning. I'm tired. One of Zida's daughters came to spend time with me in Accra one time. She was 18 then. So she went out and came back that day. Oh, auntie, I am exhausted. She was 18. I said, my dear, you have not earned the right to be exhausted. So do we have enough energy? Are we surrounding ourselves with the right kind of people? Are we surrounding ourselves with energy drainers? With those who tell us there's always something we can't do? And even if we have a sense that we might not be able to do it, at least be prepared to try. So always ask yourself, am I in the right place? And I think at 40 years, Akina Mama Africa is definitely in the right place.
For me, one of my points is in transitioning, especially transitioning from founder members or founder directors, we need to invest in that transition. It's not just about who takes over. It's much, much more than that. Even the systems of the organization transition. And I think we need to pay more give more attention to the transitioning especially the transitioning that comes from the founders. Because like I was saying, you walk into a place and as much as you say you're coming from Akina Mama, it's like, who are you? And you almost say, but I gave my name when I made the appointment. But it's, who are you? But also the other thing that is, I think, important, that has carried Akina Mama to 40 years, is the shared vision. The vision that is shared within the work that is doing, within those that are in the organization that are doing the work. And also the love of doing the work. If you come in and it's a job, it doesn't go very far. You come in and you believe and you buy into feminism and you buy into what the organization is doing. Yes, you might have the landlord coming and whatever, but amongst yourself, you will sit and chuckle about it or cry about it or share that chicken, Gloria. Share that chicken. So it's also people who come in. You can't sustain an organization with people who don't buy into the vision, who don't believe in what the organization is doing.
The most powerful thing I have ever come across in this work is sisterhood. It's the most powerful tool. Let me show you. Hold the woman's hand, hold the person next to you. Hold hands with the person next to you. Just give your hand. Right? And look at the person's whose hand you're holding. Look at her or him. Now, repeat after me. Sisterhood. Did you hear a difference?
We'll come back in the next 40 years and see. Yeah, okay.
So for me, what stands out for me that I'll share with others are 2 or 3 things. The first one is around clarifying your politics. Unless you're clear who you are, you're clear, and when we talk about this as feminists, no ifs, no buts, no howevers. You cannot give what you ask others to do. And that Akina Mama did that for the last 40 years. It was very clear. Actually, there was a time that we struggled with doing a lot of AWLIs externally, but food was burning in our own kitchens in terms of our staff team members who did not espouse the same feminist politic that the leaders at the top had. So one of the things that for me is very clear is that you must clarify your politic as a feminist, no ifs, no buts, no however, and as a Pan-African feminist, because remember, as African women, we also have our own unique nuances that we deal with. When you do that, the organization will be very clear because the niche becomes very clear. That made Akina Mama's niche very clear. And that made it even clear that when Akina Mama was transited back to the continent, the competition wasn't felt because it was clear what space Akina Mama is filling. The second thing is feminist accountability. We must be accountable to each other, and that accountability, we've walked around it. That accountability has allowed us to question ourselves. You even see here in the panel, people are saying, this one, you did this, I didn't like it. You did that, I liked it. That is an expression of accountability. The third key component is around healing and forgiveness. We've hurt each other. We've been hurt in the feminist movement. I always tell people, things that we love hurt us a lot. That's why they can hurt you. But one of the things I've learned about Akina Mama is that, yes, we've hurt ourselves, but we are always there for Akina Mama. We're always there to hold the space because there is something, the sisterhood, the fire you feel, but even also the investment you're thinking, we've invested. That holds us together. And of course, lastly, we can't continue the way we are without our own resources. And the world is changing very fast. And this is something Akina Mama has done, and we'd like to congratulate the new leadership on board because Akina Mama has its own home now. You know where to find Akina Mama. We can't have the same battles we had with our annoying landlord in London because now if you want to find Akina Mama, there is an address. So sustaining ourselves, the work we do, winning ourselves off fundraising and fund spending is very critical in the work that we do.
I think one thing that is important as organizations, we must always have our eyes on the ball. And how do we do that? You must always refer to the vision and mission and let everybody in the organization, whether it's the logistics officer whom sometimes is called the driver, the cleaner, everybody must know the vision of the organization because that way you know you'll be moving together. And secondly, like Salome was saying, top management might be there, the second layer, but unless you have that relationship throughout the organization, because those are the ones that are going to hold you up. And this is what I found in Akina Mama. If I didn't have the staff that were there and who knew exactly what was going on, I was going to be totally lost. We had the AULI coming on, CSW, curriculum review, international conference on the Great Lakes region. I would have been totally lost. So for me, that is important. And also, be learning organizations. The environment keeps on changing. Now there's AI. There is a green economy. There is this, there is that. We've got to be learning organizations so that we are on top of our game. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. And lastly, intergenerational. You know, sometimes we, the older women, are sitting there and, hey, you know, we have been to Beijing, we have been wherever. And we heard yesterday when we had the dialogues, you know, we have young people, Gen Z, they're called Gen Z, yeah? Gen Z, who are good with all these gadgets. Why aren't we letting them teach us some of these things? But more importantly, how do we work with them without us being the gatekeepers? We've got to stop gate-picking, my sisters, gatekeeping, Let Gen Zs also take the mantle. Because we keep on saying, no, you know, sometimes you get the argument which says, but you know, us, we used to do it like this. Hey, what you used to do then and what you doing now is in a totally new environment. So intergenerational, very, very critical. Thank you.
This has been a masterclass in feminist leadership, how we deal with the ups and downs. We must have clarity, we must have vision, we must have passion, we must build relationships. We must renew and learn and grow. Congratulations, Akina Mama, for 40 years of all of this. And just as we end, there are so many, many sisters and people who have been a part of this wonderful organization. Many are no longer with us. We would just like to take 1 minute to name them and honor them. And for that, let me invite BC to give us a roll call of those people. May we all stand? Okay, well, yeah. Sorry. Sit. And then she'll tell you when to stand. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we are going to honor our departed heroes at Akina Mama Africa for the past 40 years. But before we go into that, I would like to acknowledge some of the sisters who were part of the founding of Akina Mama Africa. Akina Mama Africa started in 1985 in London. I did not join Akina Mama till January 1991, so I'm not a founder member of Akina Mama Africa. There are some sisters who paved the way, who created this wonderful organization. They are not here with us today, but they are here with us in spirit. So I'd like to acknowledge Wanjiru Kihoro, may her soul rest in power. Jerusha Arodevon. Wanjiru Kihoro was from Kenya. Jerusha Arodevon is from Kenya. Brenda Madaleka is from Zimbabwe. Amina Mama from Nigeria. Pat Nozifo Badil from South Africa. And Charmaine Pereira from Tanzania and Nigeria. And now, dear sisters and gentlemen who are here, can you please rise while we acknowledge those who are no longer with us? So again, I will start with, and this does not include the members of the African Women Leadership Institute across the continent, because we have not had time to do a careful compilation of that list. So these sisters are sisters who were involved in Akina Mama, either as founder members, staff, or board members. And so we'd like to remember Wanjiru Kihoro, Efwa Graham Dokenu, Loretta Nkobo. Efwa Graham Dokenu was from Ghana, Wanjiru Kihoro from Kenya, Loretta Nkobo from South Africa, Annie Mubanga from Zambia, Yoliswa Siyolwe from Zambia, Stella Mukasa from Uganda, Eva Joyce Wynne from Zimbabwe, and Funke Oyebanjo from Nigeria. May their souls continue to rest in power, and may the wonderful legacy they all leave behind continue to endure.